You had a comment?
Yes, I also did not sleep well last night and the night before, Trustee Shroka. The night before, I was throwing up for about 6 or 7 hours for a flu or food poisoning. I don't know. An experience that common humanity and all of us probably would not enjoy. But what I want to get to is to address, well, not only the hard work of everybody at this institution to make a meeting at this beautiful building possible, to put in all the hard work for revising our software programs, for engaging and rolling up your sleeves and getting into policy initiatives such as the issue that we're discussing here with the anti-racist statement, and being concerned about discrimination, because discrimination is a real and present issue. It's an issue that we've grappled with as a society for years. It's an issue that, unfortunately, I fear that we are going to continue having to grapple with because of the fundamental flaws in human nature. And so I wanted to address, and also thank all the public commentators for coming in, and a unified message that I took away from the public comments and from the comments President Sudek offered and represented here in the shirt is unity, and the idea that we're unified in one as one community. And so I want to kind of address it more substantively, some of the points that were discussed in last month's meeting, where we had a long discussion on the various terms and principles we see underpinning the last version of the anti-racist statement, which are still present in the current iteration of the statement. Words like diversity, equity, and inclusion. These words have meanings in effect and at the surface level. But based on that conversation, we learned that in order to be an anti-racist, one must accept the core presumption that racism is ubiquitous in American society. One must ask, not did racism occur here, but how? By embracing race-conscious policies and practices, by accepting that all racial disparities are by definition racist. We learned that in various systemic power dynamics, there must be a disruption and dismantling of those systems in order to bring an anti-racist society into fruition. However, we learned that the process of becoming an anti-racist is a lifelong commitment that is never completed. We learned that unless one commits to being truly anti-racist, that one is by default passively racist. In other words, we learned that neutrality, or the reluctance to confront perceived racial inequities on the issue of race relations, is a mask for racism itself. We learned, therefore, that equality theory, and by extension neutral principles of constitutional law, are in and of themselves principles that propagate systems of oppression, allowing passive racism to proliferate. The guiding principles behind the anti-racist statement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as I have said numerous times, are based on sound aspirational objectives because they indicate a promise to provide a welcome opportunity to all on campus. But these principles really signify a very specific and quite controversial political and social view. And those that dare speak out, question, or fail to expressly indicate solidarity behind that political perspective put themselves in politically and socially tenuous positions. These guiding principles are now universal in education. That is not by chance or organic democratic function, but rather by a form of fiat. In addition to the world's most powerful corporations funding these programs in various ways, in education specifically, for instance, the Council for Higher Education Accreditation, along with several university accrediting bodies, adopted its own DEI statement recently. These accreditors in turn pressure schools into adopting DEI measures. Once the measures are adopted, the program, which has to justify its own existence, forges ahead unabated with no end in sight, because again, the work is never completed. These guiding principles are designed to replace the system of academic merit with a system of group identity preferences in a form of open discrimination, which can violate not only federal civil rights law, but also the constitutional principles of equal protection, as well as the First Amendment right to be free from compelled speech. We can speak for hours concerning the principles undergirding the proposed institutional value statement, which is really what this is. It's a value statement. But at the most rudimentary level, we are asking our community to adopt the foundation to the foundation, that the complexity of human existence can be reduced to nothing more than the group in which the individual identifies with, marginalized and oppressed, or as a privileged oppressor. This creates inherent conflict in our everyday interactions with one another. In fact, we are asked to consciously do so, creating a breeding ground for hostility, fear, and resentment, in which dehumanization runs rampant and the silencing of opposition becomes not only acceptable, but necessary. I cite the recent incident at the Stanford Law School by way of example. This formula should be familiar to most of us because it is not so dissimilar to, and in fact actively adopts the concept that capitalism fosters an inherent imbalance of power, such that in a capitalist system, the working class or oppressed group must gain awareness of their plight, become conscious, seize the means of production, and effectively overthrow the ruling capitalist class. Only then critical social theorists would contend that a paradise could come into fruition. So the truth is, in conclusion, America's history includes colonialism, abuse of native peoples, and chattel slavery. Prejudices still proliferate today. Our history also includes founding documents which set forth the fundamental principles and ideals that guided our revolution and subsequent evolution of law. It has evolved, and always for the better. And in the name of equality, we have triumphed as a nation through a civil war, defeated fascism, passed comprehensive civil rights laws multiple times. We've been able to transcend and triumph through all of the turmoil because of our foundational principles grounded in equality under the law, based on the basic understanding that all men and women are created equal, endowed with certain inalienable rights, which are not ordained by government, but by the Almighty Creator. And the greatest illusion in the world is the illusion of separation. It's an Albert Einstein quote. I led my comments in a previous meeting with that. In other words, we are all united as one human race. And in that spirit, and as I had suggested at the last meeting, what we're doing here is asking the school to adopt a value statement that is, in essence, antithetical to the equality principles and constitutional theory. And instead of having a political religion built on the Constitution, as Abraham Lincoln had suggested, we are changing that and adopting a political viewpoint as a value statement for the institution, and that's why I unfortunately cannot support the current iteration of the statement, although I would very much support a unity statement much in the same vein as suggested and offered by Trustee Songer at the last meeting.